Now, I'm going to be referring to pages 3-41 and 3-42 as we parse indicative verb forms found in exercise 5. The first example in exercise 5 is the verb elusate. All right, as we parse this verb, the first step is to ask, what is the lexical entry? Well, for all of these forms, numbers 1 through 53 on exercise 5, the verb is the verb luo. So that's our lexical entry, luo. And by the way, as we look at this lexical entry, what is the present tense stem of this verb? Okay, how do we present tense stem? We take the lexical entry, we take the personal ending, and we remove it. And what we're left with is the present tense stem of the verb. Step number 2. Is there an augment? As you look at this verb form, elusate, can you hear the augment in front of the verb elusate? Yes, there is an augment. And if there is an augment, we know that we're dealing with the indicative mood. Why do we know that we're dealing with the indicative mood if there is an augment? Well, because only in the indicative is time an element. And if that augment is showing us past time, then we know we are in the indicative mood. Not the subjunctive, not the imperative, not the optative, not the participle, nor the infinitive. If there is an augment, then we're dealing with the indicative mood, and it's showing one of the past tenses, one of the past time tenses. And what are those 3 tenses with past time in the indicative mood? The imperfect, the aorist, and the pluperfect. Forget pluperfect. All right, so we've narrowed the parsing of this verb down to it being indicative mood and either an imperfect, aorist, or pluperfect tense. And since we're not worrying about pluperfect, we could say that it is either imperfect or aorist. Turn the page to 3-42. Step 3. What is the personal ending? Well, how would you know what the personal ending is on the back of this verb? Remember a little earlier, we looked at our various verb forms on pages 3-14 and following, or the detailed paradigms of our verbs on page 3-23. Or you can see a summary of these endings on page 3-16. There are a number of places where the endings are given to you in this grammar, and you do need to commit these endings to memory. So if you, just for the sake of this exercise, look at page 3-16. All of the endings are given to you graphically here. Find the ending that is spelled with a TE or a tau epsilon on the end. Well, set 1 has those endings, has that ending with an epsilon connecting vowel, but we have an alpha connecting vowel in front of this one. Set 2 also has this tau epsilon ending, but there's also an epsilon connecting vowel. Set 3, there we go. Set 3 has the ending tau epsilon with an alpha connecting vowel in front of the ending. So we see that this ending tau epsilon is a second person plural ending. I'll just abbreviate that by saying 2P, second person plural. Now, we've also identified the connecting vowel is an alpha connecting vowel. And we also, this ending, tau epsilon, is what voice? Well, according to our chart, it tells us that it is an active voice. This is an active voice ending. And that's all we've learned right now anyway. The middle or passive endings will be different. Now what you could do is to look at the detailed times, or, which by the way are on page 323 following, or go back and look at the summary of the paradigms on 3-14. It may be a little easier to see them there. Find which one of these verb forms of luo is spelled like this. Well, if there is an augment out front, we had decided that this is either going to be imperfect or first aorist. As we see an alpha connecting vowel and we see a sigma tense indicator, then we know that this verb is a first aorist. And I'm just going to abbreviate that A-O-R, aorist. Look on page 3-17 and following. Here you see all of the tenses of luo laid out before you. Look at 3-18, and there's the first aorist tense. You notice that the first aorist has a sigma tense indicator. The imperfect does not. And it is also the first aorist that has this alpha connecting vowel, whereas the imperfect has an epsilon connecting vowel. Now go back to page 3-41, and let's go over the steps again. I went through them a little too quickly, but let's slow this down and look at this again. Number one, what is the lexical entry of this verb? The lexical entry is the verb luo. Number two, is there an augment? Yes, there is an augment. And if there is an augment, then we know that we are in indicative mood. Why? Only in the indicative is time an element. Also, we know that we're dealing with one of three tenses which can show past time in the indicative mood. That would be the imperfect, the aorist, or the pluperfect. And we're not worrying about pluperfect right now, so either this would be the imperfect or the aorist. Turn the page to -42. Number three, what is the personal ending? The personal ending is te. And what person and number is this personal ending? It is second plural, 2P. Step number four, what is the connecting vowel? The connecting vowel here is an alpha. Step number five, is there a tense indicator? Yes, there is a tense indicator, the sigma right here. What is the tense stem? The tense stem is the present tense stem. How did we get the present tense stem? We take our lexical entry of the verb, we remove the personal ending, and what we're left with is a tense stem. Putting all of this information together, with the augment, with the sigma tense indicator, an alpha connecting vowel, and this personal ending, we have the aorist, active, indicative, second plural. The aorist is the tense, active is the voice, indicative is the mood. Second plural would be the person and the number. TVMPN, tense, voice, mood, person, and number.